What do you think about fitness? Sometimes I think goal. Sometimes I think achievement. Sometimes I think envy. That's when I look at the athletes. But there's a lot to fitness that maybe we don't think about so much. Mental fitness and social fitness and just how fit we are to get up every day and face what life has thrown at us. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Moran, and you are listening to the Main Street Vegan Podcast. Thank you so much for doing that. Always a pleasure to have you here for these 13 years. So if you're a new listener and you want to catch some really interesting archives, you can just go back and back and back and see what we were saying about being a Main Street vegan back in the ancient days of 2012 and 2015. Well, this is now, and 2025, a lot of people are saying we need a little bit more help to get through life unscathed than maybe we did back then, and even back then wasn't all that long ago. So it is my extreme pleasure today to be introducing you to someone that you may already know. You may know her No Bullshit Vegan podcast. In fact, I'll bet you do. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I have been a guest on that podcast, I believe, 2 whole times. And it is high time that we bring its host, Karina Inkster, to the Main Street Vegan podcast. Karina is a fitness and nutrition coach. Bet you figured that part out. And she's been vegan since 2003. She has written 5 books on an interesting assortment of topics. She's written resistance band workouts, the vegan athlete, foam rolling. These are all really practical topics I would love to know more about. She is a lover of chin-ups and dark chocolate, bless her heart. Her team's award-winning online coaching programs help vegans worldwide break free from diet culture and build health habits they'll still hold at the age of 103. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for having me on the show. Great to be here.
Oh, it's wonderful to be talking with you. And it's so interesting to kind of be on the other side of the microphone sometimes and really fun because just researching you, I found all these interesting things that I didn't know. So before I jump into some of these things, because I'm so excited to ask them, I do not want to forget to ask you your vegan story.
Right. Yes. Everyone has a vegan story, and I feel like mine is not that exciting, honestly, but I want to honor it. So when I was 11, I went vegetarian, and I'm not using this as an excuse, but back then there was no social media, there was no YouTube. I don't think I had even gotten access to the internet until I was maybe 14 or 15. So a lot of the things we now know and a lot of the information that's easily available about animal agriculture just wasn't known. It just wasn't talked about. So I went vegetarian for ethical reasons. I didn't want to kill animals. But it took me 5 years to realize that the meat, the dairy, the egg industries are all connected. They're one and the same. They are morally indistinguishable from each other. Your listeners probably know, but as an example, if someone eats eggs, they're also supporting the chicken meat industry. And if someone eats dairy, they're also supporting the veal industry. So as soon as I figured that out at the age of 16, I went vegan immediately and never looked back.
Oh, that's a wonderful, wonderful story. And it's so true. I was talking to a young woman, I'm really young, like 22, the other day, and she's not vegan, but she was curious. And I said, when I started out, it was different. You couldn't just get non-dairy milk at a coffee place. And she said, Oh, I know. They didn't have oat milk. I guess you had to have soy. It's like, are you kidding? You
That's
could
cute. That's
you could
cute.
get soy powder from some guy in Ohio who put it in a plastic bag, but yeah, it's very different. And it's wonderful now that it's easier. You would think that because it's easy, it would just become this giant fad
That would
I
be
guess it
nice.
kind of was, a few years ago. Now things are a little bit different. But let me ask you one other question, Karina. You were 11 and then you were 16 and you were having all of these awakenings. Other people can be 60 and not have them. What is it about you? What is it about us, from your point of view, that's different from all the people who don't see it?
That's such a great question. And I wish I knew what the answer was because that could be formulated into, for lack of a better term, the magic pill to make everybody vegan. So I'm not quite sure what it is. Maybe it's a connection to our inherent compassion. Maybe it's realizing how our own individual choices affect not just other animals, but also other humans. I mean, I can talk about this later, but I think being vegan is climate action, and I think it's an action toward the global health of all humans. So maybe it's a combination of the compassion piece and realizing that our actions are more than just ourselves.
Yes. Well, I hope that we do figure that out. Maybe somebody will do a big old fancy study and find that it's something in our brains and they could implant it into
Yeah, that would be
everybody
great.
else, wouldn't it? So I want to talk to you first, and I want to make sure not to forget it. You have a master's degree in gerontology, which is the study of old age and the process of aging. And I imagine you did that pretty young. You're still pretty young. So tell us about that. What inspired your study into maturity?
Right. So you're absolutely correct. Gerontology is not just the study of older adults, but it's also the study of aging and the aging process and populations at different life stages. So I went into my undergrad doing a psychology degree, doing a lot of health psychology, thinking that I would do my master's in psychology and then possibly a PhD and become an academic. And I took one class in gerontology during my undergrad time where I was like, wow, this is super interesting. We can think about what our lives are going to be like decades from now. And the choices we're making now, at the time I was in my early 20s, will affect, our 80-year-old selves and our 90-year-old selves. And I just thought it was so interesting that I switched my plan and I did my second degree in gerontology, focusing on health and aging. There's other specializations you could do, like the environment and aging, for example, or technology and aging. But I decided to focus on the health piece. I think because I've always had a long-term view toward health myself, not just being fit because I want to look awesome, although we're all human and I think that's part of it and that's fine. But I want to be 100 and swimming. I want to be 90 and deadlifting. I want to be 80 doing chin-ups. And so I think it just spoke to this long-term view of mine. And I've always really enjoyed spending time with older people. I think that's a demographic that I connect with. My grandma, who lives in Ontario, is turning 100 in a couple months. She lives independently. She strength trains twice a week. She swims laps every day. So I want to be like her when I grow up.
Wow, what a fabulous role model to have. I have one who's not related. It's better if they're related. But my first yoga teacher, Stella Churfus, is 100. She still teaches a chair yoga class twice a week. She lives in a third floor walk up. So I kind of look to her and her advice. And it's interesting, you both talked about dark chocolate because Stella says that her secrets to aging well are the stretching while still under the covers and having a little dark chocolate to inspire you to get out of bed.
Interesting.
So this is really, really interesting and fascinating to me because I think I always had a kind of short view. I think because I grew up in that era when we were getting under our desks and putting our heads between our knees because they were going to drop a bomb at any minute, it seemed, that
Mm-hmm.
I just never really thought that I would grow into maturity. I was talking with my daughter about this yesterday because she's like you. She's always had kind of the long view. She's a performer, lifelong vegan. I'll get that in. And
Mm-hmm.
once when we hadn't even moved to New York yet. I think she was maybe 14. And we were in New York and she had headshots taken back when actors had paper headshots. And we saw this very, very elder actor, a woman who had been in a movie called The Wedding Singer. So we recognized her. And she came in and picked up her 500 headshots, which are really heavy. And I was quite impressed that she could carry them out so easily. And my daughter said to me, my 14-year-old, "You see that lady?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "That's going to be me because I'm not
Mm,
going to give up." And
that's
that kind of
amazing.
sounds like you, because I'd be like, well, I'll never be, I'll never be that old. And I almost am. So it's interesting how time kind of, creeps in. So from this information that you have, an academic study into this process of aging, how have you lived your life and how are you living your life differently from how you might have done it without that information?
Well, that's a really good question because I feel like you can take it too far. I don't mean you personally, but people in general, and just think about the future, right? At the expense of enjoying our time now and being in the moment now. So I don't want to live my life just thinking about what things will be like when I'm 70 or 80 or 105. I also want to be enjoying what I'm doing now. So there's kind of two sides to this. One side is I am training now to be a badass 100-year-old. And this goes along with Peter Attia's idea. He's an American Canadian researcher.
How do
He
you
has an
spell
idea.
his
Oh,
surname?
Attia is Attia.
Okay.
Fantastic book called Outlive that one of my doctor friends recommended. And he's got this concept of the centenarian decathlon. So he gets his
Haha.
patients to write down 10 things they want to be able to do when they're 100.
Ooh.
Lifting a suitcase so they can travel, lifting a grandchild, getting off the floor after playing with your grandchild, swimming, walking, carrying groceries, whatever it is. And then you train now in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s to be that 100-year-old. So
Ooh.
part of what I'm doing is that because, there's no formula, but generally what you want to do at the age of 100, you need to do 2.5 times that now. So for example, if you want to be able to pick up, like a suitcase of a certain weight when you're 100, you need to be able to deadlift 2.5 times that now. If you want to be able to run or walk a certain pace, you need to be going 2.5 times faster now. So it's kind of a framework for training for that so-called centenarian decathlon. But I also think it's super important that you're enjoying what you're doing now. So my whole workout schedule, and I work out basically every day of the week doing different things, lots of strength training, lots of distance swimming, jump rope. It's all based on enjoyment. I run an open water swim club in my city so that I'm consistent with my own swimming and so that I have a social network around swimming. And it's fantastic. I have 4 different strength training buddies, training partners. So all of my strength training workouts involve someone else. And it's a social thing, it's an accountability thing, and it's also an enjoyment thing. So I feel like there's the enjoyment now and the training for future selves.
That is so interesting and inspiring. Let me ask you a question because this is kind of personal to me. I have always gotten injured really easily. It started when I was 27 and was trying running back before they told you shouldn't do it around a small concrete circle wearing canvas kids, but it was the 70s. So I ended up with a knee surgery from that. And it's just, I've rarely had things wrong with my interior, a couple of things, but mostly joint and, that kind of things. And it's certainly not getting better as I get older. So how do you advise people to work around injuries and limitations?
Great question. And I relate to this as well because I've had a couple things. Right now, nothing. So knock on wood.
Yay.
Yay. But I did have a shoulder issue, biceps tendonitis, which just
Ooh.
would not go away. 4 years, we're talking shoulder issues.
Oh
And
no.
I'm still kind of coming out of that. So I can relate to the, feeling frustrated and limited and injured. And it kind of depends. I mean, I guess one of my questions for you is how much strength training has there been?
That's the most thing that I do. Well, I mean, I've done a lot of yoga in my life as well, but I love strength training and
Excellent.
I do it. But
Hmm.
very often there are lapses because something or other, it's pes anserine bursitis or it's frozen shoulder or it's, blah, blah, blah. And then I have to start over again. So I've never
Hmm.
gotten to really heavy weights like I would love to be lifting.
Hmm. Well, it is important to do exactly what you're doing, which is whatever you can at any given time. Honestly, I feel like part of my coaching team's role is not just making workouts for people, it's actually being really creative and thinking outside the box. We have clients who have had surgeries, or one client had a frozen shoulder for a year. She just did a buttload of lunges and core work for a year,
Yeah.
right? So we have to think outside the box a little bit. I had to take 5 months off swimming because of the shoulder issue.
Oh,
And that's just swimming is my mental health practice,
yes.
right? I need to be in the water. So I decided I would figure out something I could do in the pool. Usually I'm swimming open water in the summer, but I decided I'd find something I could do that would help me with my shoulder, would help it heal, but still allows me A, to be in the water, and B, to get a good workout. So for 5 months, I was doing kickboard drills. I was fetching 20-pound bricks off the bottom of the pool. I was treading water with added weight, which is really challenging. And I just had to be creative. So was it the same as swimming laps or swimming open water? No, but I was getting my workout. I was being social with my swim buddies, and I was, doing the water thing, which is good for my mental health.
Yes. I guess it's the commitment that if you really want to live well, particularly long and well, you've got to be active. You've got to be active. You've got to be active. End of story. Or
Hmm.
it's just not going to happen.
And that looks different for everybody. Yes, we need to be active, but no, we don't have to run. I don't run. I don't like it. It's nasty business, as one of our clients calls it. Not for everyone, but I like short and intense cardio. So I do jump rope, which is fantastic conditioning, super fun. You can listen to music, you can learn cool tricks, and you're done in 20 minutes. You did an amazing workout in a very short period of time. So some people are on the opposite spectrum. They really like that long, continuous endurance training because it's good for them, good for their mental health. So I'm not saying everyone should do exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying you got to figure out what's going to work for you.
Right. So tell us about your coaches and what you do. We'd ordinarily talk about that at the end, but it came up. So just so we don't forget.
Sure. So I run KI Health and Fitness, which is basically kicking people's butts for a living, as I usually tell people. But my team and I, so I've got myself and three other women who work with me, Zoe, Izzy, and Kaylin. They're all coaches. Izzy has actually done your Main Street Vegan Academy
Yeah, I
certification.
know Izzy.
So you know Izzy. And then Kaylin and Zoe are both fitness coaches. We all work with our client base. And so we work with vegan folks all over the world. It's completely online. We've got clients in Japan and London and all across the States and Canada, Australia, and they're all working on strength training in some form. It's not the main thing that everyone does, but in some form, we are helping people to get strong. And then we're also looking at their nutrition. Is it in line with the goals that they have and the strength training they want to do? Some people are also training for other things. There's a rower in our midst, there's a competitive cyclist. And so we just work with them on kind of curating their training schedule, being consistent. We've got eyeballs on literally everything people do, every workout they do, every meal they track. And then we also problem solve. So, like we just talked about, right? If there's an injury or if someone comes to us already with an existing condition, we often are just super creative and we're working around it.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we'll put all that information in the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com, but you want to give us a website for people that aren't going to go to the show notes?
Sure, it's karinainkster.com.
That's easy.
That's it.
INA. Okay,
Yeah.
Inkster.com. Okay, cool. So I was seeing somebody on Instagram the other day telling the story of a friend of hers who was refused as a client by a trainer, somebody that this woman was going to pay. This trainer would not take her money because she was vegan.
Oh dear.
So I know that things in the conventional training world are not great for plant eaters. Can you talk a little bit about why that is and what people can do about it when they run into that anti-veg prejudice?
Great question. I'm going to try not to veer off into what is wrong with the fitness industry
Oh,
too
you
much
could.
because,
I think we'd find that interesting too.
yeah, honestly, that could be a whole other episode. It's a bit strange because I'm in the fitness industry, but what I'm trying to do is chip away at the bullshit. And there's so much of it, including this vegan prejudice thing. There's diet culture, there's a lack of body diversity, there's stereotyping, there's sexism. I mean, I'm making it out to seem like it's horrendous, and it's really not. But overall, the mainstream fitness industry needs an overhaul. And part of that is understanding how plant-based diets work. It blows my mind that in 2025, someone is refused as a client, a paying client, because they're vegan. And I feel like a lot of that is pure misinformation. A lot of that is a lack of nutrition training in the fitness world, honestly. And with the growth of what I think are ridiculous fad diets, like the carnivore diet, there's just more and more misinformation. And essentially, anyone with a social media account at this point is seen as a legitimate source of information. So the barrier to entry is very low. People can say whatever they want. And so I feel like there's this general idea still that people in 2025 still ask vegans, where do you get your protein from? And that's translating into, well, you're not going to be a good client for me because you don't eat protein or whatever else they believe about a vegan diet.
Yes.
So, there's only so much we as individuals can do when we encounter someone like that. I mean, it's their business. They have a right to refuse us as clients if they want. Honestly, at that point, I wouldn't want to work with them anyways because it shows me they don't have the knowledge to help me with my nutrition as a client.
Right.
But depending on how the conversation goes, it could be worth sharing some fitness professionals who are vegan. Or, hey, you might want to look into for clients down the road, folks like Robert Cheek or power lifters who are vegan or endurance athletes who are vegan, people like my team and I who are all super long-term vegans and strength athletes and coaches. So it kind of depends what the vibe is. I would probably want to send them a whole bunch of resources and then just walk away and see what happens.
Yeah, that's very good. On the protein question, my favorite answer ever comes from a registered dietitian, Marty Davy. And when she's asked that, or she tells her clients to say this when they're asked it, is where do you think I get it? So
That's good.
it puts the asker like a little bit on the defensive, but not real because they're like, and they'll say something like, peanut butter, and then
Hmm.
people can talk about legumes and whatnot. But I think that's so interesting because, like, well, you're looking right at me. I'm upright. I'm fine.
Hmm.
I'm obviously not somewhere in the invisible lack of protein ward. That's the other thing. I think somebody has done this where they take a camera to a hospital and it's like, I want to be led to the ward where all of the protein deficient vegans are. Where is that? And
That's great.
instead there are other wards with our omnivorous friends primarily.
Yes.
So while we're on fitness, let's bust some myths. What are some of the biggest myths about fitness that you just wish more people would stop believing?
Great question. I feel like there's myths about veganism and nutrition as well, but from a fitness lens, there are so many. I mean, honestly, the reason I started my podcast in 2018 was because I felt there were so many myths in fitness and nutrition and veganism. So it's hard to choose. But I think one of the big ones around fitness is that more is always better, right? Like you got to work out longer, you got to work out harder. The only way you can progress is by doing more. And that's just not true. Rest and recovery are just as important as training. So I feel like this whole go big or go home thing is not sustainable and it doesn't lead to long-term fitness habits. And one that's a bit more focused on women is this concept that strength training is going to make women bulky.
Do
And
they
kind of like the
still believe
protein question.
that?
Oh my God, there are still people who are like, well, I want to strength train, but I don't want to get too big or I don't want to get too bulky.
In your
And
dreams.
I feel like there's a lot of different layers to this. I mean, this is rooted in sexism for sure. I mean, that's one aspect of it. What is wrong with being bulky if even if you did get bulky from strength training, which by the way takes decades and very, very, very focused training. It's kind of like someone saying, well, I don't want to learn to drive because I might accidentally become an F1 driver.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't happen. But even if it did, you have to have a conversation around, well, why is bulky seen as bad even now? And I think, folks like Ilona Mar, who has a massive following of millions on Instagram, 200-pound, absolutely jacked swimsuit model and Olympic athlete. People like her are changing the conversation now more than ever
Yes.
around what does it mean to be fit? What does it mean to be an athlete? So she's doing a great service to this whole conversation, but it still exists. Still exists. And then while we're on the subject of, bulky and looks and stuff, I think one of the myths that is huge, especially in fitness marketing, is that the main reason to exercise is to change how we look, right? People have this idea of like, oh, I want to lose weight, so I got to start running. Or, oh, I ate extra dessert yesterday, so I got to do extra 10 minutes of cardio. It's all about looks. And that's diet culture. That is not sustainable. It is not psychologically healthy. Yes, aesthetics can be part of it. Like I said before, we're all human. We all want to look great. That's fine. But if the main reason you're exercising is aesthetics, you're not setting yourself up for success.
So let's do a little fantasizing. What does it look like when fitness is centered around strength and function and the love of movement instead of the, oh my gosh, what does my butt look like in the mirror at the gym?
Hmm. I find that training for aesthetics more often than not, not always, but usually involves an avoidance mindset. Oh, I can't eat that. Oh, I can't go to this party. Oh, I have to avoid this. It's kind of like a punishment mindset. Oh, I have to do extra cardio? Whereas training for function and strength is really more about abundance. What can my body do? What crazy feat of strength can I train for next? What do I enjoy doing? What milestones can I celebrate? How does my training affect the rest of my life? So I feel like the mindset piece is huge. Avoidance versus abundance. And if you're in an abundance mindset, you're also celebrating different things. You're celebrating the first pull up you ever get, or a deadlift PR, or the fact that you can carry your groceries all in one trip instead of obsessing over things like, what your butt looks like in the mirror, as you said, as an example. It's just more empowering. And then going back to what I was saying about making sure that you're doing activities that you enjoy, it could be barbell training, it could be hiking, it could be swimming, it could be martial arts. I feel like training for strength is more in that camp of finding activities that you enjoy. It could be powerlifting, it could be Olympic style lifting, it could be going to CrossFit. Strength training could be taking your resistance bands to the beach and doing a 10-minute workout looking at the ocean. There's so many options. It's just more varied if we're looking at function and joy and strength and not just what we look like.
It just, that word empowering, that was what came to me before you said it.
Mm,
Just to hear you talk about it, that's so wonderful. Well, something else that's empowering is when we're vegan or when we're getting to be vegan and we start to see, hey, wait a minute. I thought I was doing this for the very important reason that animal agriculture is a nasty thing. Or I thought I was doing this for the important reason that my arteries matter. And then it's like, oh my gosh, But here's another reason, and here's another reason. This is a big picture choice. Can you talk about that?
Right. So this is basically connecting our own individual choices to larger issues and larger, things like social justice and climate change and things like that, as an example. But we all know at this point that animal agriculture is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, biodiversity loss, you name it, right? So to connect with something like that, veganism is climate action. So again, it's a mindset piece. We don't always want to think about avoidance and, oh, I can't eat that anymore. And, oh, that's not part of my diet. We're thinking about how our individual actions are a vote for the type of world we want to live in. I want to live in a world that has a reasonable climate. So I'm vegan for ethical reasons primarily, but also as climate action. And like we were talking about before, plant-based diets also reduce harm not just to animals, but also to humans. We could build a much more equitable global food system if we didn't have to feed livestock like 60 to 80% of the grain that we're growing. It's kind of ridiculous. So these individual actions, being vegan, sometimes can feel like they're really not having an effect. I had a conversation with a swimmer friend on my team yesterday. We were talking about individual actions and how it can kind of feel like we're not really making a difference. And one of the things that came up was, well, you never know who's watching. You never know who else you're inspiring. And by us being vegan, we're normalizing veganism. We're not just making choices for ourselves, but we're showing other people that this is our normal. This is how we can exist in the world, right? So there's that piece around veganism. I feel like there's also a similar connection to larger issues with fitness, right? So my team and I want to dismantle some of this harmful diet culture, the kind of like Fitspo Instagram culture, right? And we want to be inclusive.
What? I
We,
don't know what that is. What's
oh,
Fitspo?
Fitspo is short for like fitness inspiration,
Okay.
except it's always really ripped people, usually white people, usually in some form sexualized photos on Instagram or on TikTok, someone with a six pack standing there using the hashtag Fitspo. It's very harmful. It's diet culture. It's showing us that there's one way to look healthy or to look attractive. And what we're trying to do is promote strength for all bodies. You're fine the way that you are right now. There's nothing wrong with you. So movement practice, we're trying to make inclusive. I feel like that's a huge umbrella of social justice and diversity. And coaching our clients is basically an opportunity to help these folks see that their individual actions affect communities and affect animals and affect the planet. So there's the fitness piece, there's the nutrition piece, being vegan, and they both have this really large sphere of influence.
Hmm. This is so fascinating to me in the current climate because there are a lot of people who are with you in kind of the first maybe several yards of what you're talking about, and then they veer off in a different direction. So a lot of people want a better world, a simpler life, a more sustainable world, but they're going about it in a different way. They think that they should be buying their animal products from small farms. I often joke that every omnivore I know gets their animal products from small farms, except there aren't
Yeah,
that
that's a good
many
one.
small farms. So, what do you say to these people that think that small scale animal farming is such a great thing?
There's a lot of misconceptions here. A lot of people just assume that small scale equals better. But really, if you look at the data on things like greenhouse gas emissions and pollution, for example, the most sustainable animal products are worse for the environment than the least sustainable plant-based products. So this is huge. I'll say it again. The most sustainable animal products are worse for climate change and the environment than the least sustainable plant-based products. So even the most sustainable, supposedly small scale animal products have higher greenhouse gas emissions, higher land use, bigger water footprints, more pollution than the least sustainable plant products. So, really, the lesson is when in doubt, choose plant foods, even if they're not local. As an example, you would have to ship dried peas around the world 100 times to match the carbon footprint of local beef. It's absolutely insane. So you still have methane emissions if you're using animals, ruminants specifically, locally. You've got resource use, you have to feed them. So it's just not a sustainable, effective method of food production. And also, as I learned from Corey Davis, who was on my show, who you're probably familiar with, he's an agrologist and has lots of experience in the plant-based world. Usually, animals are shipped off to the same exact place anyways. In the end, they're usually finished in a feedlot and they're slaughtered in the same place that the giant commercial operations are killing their animals. So, yeah, it's local, but it's got ripple effects. It is not actually as environmentally friendly as a lot of people think it is. And your best bet in all cases is going to be plant-based foods.
Mm. Amen and hallelujah. And I think we're learning in Cowspiracy that even though, I detest factory farming, that certainly for beef, even factory farmed beef is more environmentally sustainable because there just isn't enough land
Exactly.
for all the people that want to eat meat,
Yep.
grass-fed beef.
I have to tell you a quick side note here. I was just a speaker at a climate action group here
Uh,
in Powell River.
mhm.
So we were talking about how our individual actions can lead to, a more viable climate and a more sustainable food system. And there were a lot of farmers, a lot of food growers in the audience. One of them had goats on her property, and she said, well, my goats don't emit methane. They're pretty clean. They have like little pellets as their poop. And I was like, goats are ruminants, whether you feed them differently or not. They're huge sources of methane, which is 300 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, by the way. So people just don't know. She said, "Oh, well, my chickens don't have nitrous oxide in their droppings. It doesn't smell like anything, but nitrous oxide is hugely uh negative for our environment, and it's a greenhouse gas. It's very potent. So there's a lot of folks who grow food who are in the local food space and also have no idea how things are affecting the environment.
That is unbelievable. I
Hmm.
believe you. Oh my God. It's almost like, well, my kid is perfect. My
Yeah,
kid
exactly.
had a
Yeah.
tantrum, but no, you were
Yeah.
asleep.
And it's a lot of trying to justify the current system. Well,
Yeah.
I have goats and they're healthy and my property is beautiful and I have lots of grass versus thinking about what a different food system would look like.
Yes. Wow, that's utterly fascinating. So
Hmm.
while I am letting that kind of gel in my brain, listeners, I just want to tell you a couple of things that are going on in the world of Main Street Vegan. First, I do want to thank our sponsor for this episode, Complement. Wonderful compliments. They're supplements, but they're really complements to your super duper whole food plant-based diet. They are made by vegans for vegans. Their website is lovecompliment.com. They've got a wonderful multi that's really, really good for people who have a great plant-based diet, a protein powder based on pea protein that I really, really love. And if you use the code Main Street, all caps, in the discount box, you get yourself 10% off now and forever. That's pretty cool. And speaking of discounts, we are offering a heck of a discount for the Main Street Vegan Academy Vegan Lifestyle Coach and Educator Certification Program that is coming up starting in late September 2025. The reason that we're doing this is because the world is looking pretty difficult out there, difficult for getting the vegan message out. And so the more people we have who are trained and certified and know what they're doing and can tell other people how to get on this bandwagon in a way that is effective and kind and works, then that's what we want to do. So check us out, mainstreetvegan.com. We are live on Zoom. And what that means is that unlike an online course, which, we may one day become one of those because that seems to be what people expect. But as of right now, I am holding on to my incredible belief that real life, real people matters. So you'll be able to get to know your classmates as well as graduates from earlier cohorts. You'll get to know our fabulous instructors, many of whom you've heard of because they're luminaries in the vegan and plant-based space. So check us out, mainstreetvegan.com. And if you would like to enroll for this 2025 cohort only, you can do that for half off. You can do it for a 50% discount if you just put the code FRIEND in the discount box. Friend, FRIEND, all caps. Because you know what? If you listen to this podcast, we're friends. If you're a vegan, we're friends. So if that's something that is lighting you up as you hear it, I hope to be welcoming you to the Main Street Vegan Academy family this fall. Now, my wonderful guest, Karina Inkster, and just so we're letting you know exactly where to find her, you can go to karinainkster.com. She is at Karina Inkster on Facebook and Instagram, and her fabulous podcast is the No Bullshit, that's hyphenated, Vegan Podcast. So, Karina, you are also a musician. And one of your instruments, the accordion, you share with my husband. He was
Right.
he was ranked second in the world at the age of 12 in classical accordion. And it's a thing. So
That's
tell us
amazing.
about your accordion and piano. And I'm not even going to pronounce the other one. I'll say it wrong. So tell us about being a musical vegan, a fit musical vegan.
Hey, I like that description. I think that's going to be my tagline now. I love
Good.
it. So the other instrument is didgeridoo. That's an indigenous Australian instrument.
Yes.
I've been playing that for a long time, but it started with piano. So I've been playing that since I was 5. Then my life was oboe for a while. I was playing in a couple orchestras. Then came the accordion because I saw the movie Amélie, the French movie, which I loved, and the soundtrack is all accordion and piano by Jan Tiersen. So I decided at that point, oh, I need to play this instrument. And didgeridoo actually came when I was 14, so that was a while ago. It's a wind instrument, and I play in a couple different band outfits with that. But honestly, if I had to pick, the main one is accordion. I co-direct the Cathet Accordion Fest, which happens every year. So we're just planning our 5th one. That's going to happen in May. And, honestly, sometimes it feels like I'm running 2 different careers, kind of separate from each other. I teach occasionally 1 day a week. I'll be at the Music Academy with some adult students in accordion and didgeridoo. I perform. I just got back from a gig in Gibson's on the Sunshine Coast with my tango band. So sometimes I feel like it's just 2 separate things. When I'm not doing the fitness thing, I'm doing the music thing. But other times it feels like there really are more overlaps than not, like structure and practicing and discipline and skill building, collaboration, relationships, all that kind of stuff. It works both in music and in fitness. So I feel like they're different, but they're the same, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I admire musicians so much because that's not a gift I have even remotely. But to be able to just surround myself in somebody's wonderful music, it's just one of the greatest gifts and joys. So
Yeah.
that is really cool. You are living such a beautiful life. And sometimes I think that's the best thing we can do to attract people to veganism. Just live fully, live with joy. And I call it attraction activism.
That's
Activism.
exactly it. 100%.
Yeah. Well, this has been just a uplifting conversation, and I'm sure everybody listening thought so too. Do you have a famous last word for us to end on?
Famous last word. I might have to use yours of being an attraction-based activist. You could be a foodie, sharing amazing vegan foods. Honestly, I feel like that's a very effective way to get people to start talking about veganism. You could be an educator, you could be a speaker, you could be a fitness professional. But really, if we're looking on the positive side, so instead of focusing on what we have to give up, we're focusing on how we're empowering ourselves to live in alignment with our values. I think that's honestly going to lead to more long-term vegans, and I think it's very effective. So, Victoria, what you're doing with Main Street Vegan Academy, just your work in general, I think it embodies this attraction-based activism, attraction-based veganism. And you never know who we're going to influence. Like we talked about before, we just keep doing our thing, we live our lives, and we're influencing a lot of people without even knowing.
It's true. And one thing that I've found so just it feels so great is years and years later, this has happened several times. People get back to me and say, we used to think you ate really strangely. But then
Right.
my doctor told me I either had to change my diet or start taking drugs. And so now I eat strangely too. I've heard from people like that I worked with 30 years ago. I mean,
Wow.
people are watching us.
It's
And I
true.
think even when they're not jumping right on the bandwagon, they still see what we do. And oh my gosh, seeing your life has just made me want to go up a couple of pounds on some of those weights.
Ooh, I like it. Very
Thank
nice.
you. Thank you so very much. And thanks everybody who's listening. What an honor that you've spent this hour with us. So be sure to check out Karina because she's just as cool as can be. And in the meantime, let us get out there and make Main Street vegan.